Hi, I'm Steve Barnhart, Extension Forage Specialist, assisting with the drought recovery program today. Most of us experienced some degree of drought in 2012. Management into the fall and winter may have an implication on how well these forages have survived the winter and how we may choose to manage them in the spring. We may be approaching 2013 in a recovery mode or a continued strategy with drought issues to think about. My go-to list, to-do list for forages would include monitoring and evaluating pastures. Certainly managing fertility thoughtfully, not to misuse fertilizers and the economics of that. Consider reseeding if it's necessary based on our evaluations. Consider working with our most thinnest areas, most badly damaged areas first in our reseeding efforts, and to consider recovery mode from the plant standpoint in harvest and grazing management this coming growing season. As a guideline in pasture evaluation and hayfield evaluation, try to determine what the plant cover is. Ideally, more than 70% cover is a goal. If it's less than that, we might have to consider some reestablishment or reseeding, adding other forages. By comparison, 50% and 30% cover certainly would justify some efforts for overseeding. Fertilization certainly should be based on soil testing, particularly for soil pH, lime, and phosphorus. Don't guess. It's an expensive effort if you don't need that kind of forage. Certainly we also need to think about why we're fertilizing. If we expect good growing conditions, then adding fertilization, particularly nitrogen, may make more sense. If we're in a continued drought condition early on in the spring, extra fertilizer is not going to be the solution. Also, fertilize if you need the additional forage to be produced. If you don't need it, don't go to an extreme on fertilization. And the kind of fertilizer you use can have some degree of control on what kind of vegetation you're producing. Nitrogen generally stimulates grasses. Our legumes are supported better by good pH levels, and phosphorus and potassium with a little less nitrogen. So think about that. Many of our pastures are cool season forages. They grow best during the cool parts of the growing season. Historically, we put the majority of our nitrogen on cool season grass pastures in early spring. It gives us an even additional extra flush of productivity. If we don't have the livestock power to utilize all that extra forage, that may not be the most economic use of that fertilizer dollar. Some alternatives would be to use slightly less fertilizer and maybe delay some of our spring fertilization into mid-spring to push a little of that forage productivity into late spring into early summer. Additionally, putting some fertilizer on in late summer, assuming adequate moisture, to stimulate some extra fall growth of our cool season species and a little later growth opportunity for that. No real good solutions with nitrogen to produce midsummer grass with our cool season forages. Legumes sometimes may be a solution for part of that. Legumes, we know, will provide extra free nitrogen from a fixed nitrogen standpoint from the nodules. Another benefit from legumes in pastures is the presence of better quality in our mixed grass legume pastures from a diet quality standpoint. And thirdly, one of the big benefits of adding a legume is to improve the seasonal distribution of that production. The legumes do grow a little better during that midsummer period and help to balance out some of that summer productivity. One of the best ways to include legumes into a grass pasture is frost seeding. Frost seeding is literally spreading legume seed on the soil surface in late winter. For Iowa, that's late February and early March. Generally, the freezing and thawing cycle of wet soil surfaces help to work that seed shallowly into the soil surface. We get some additional coverage with some early spring rain splash for that seed until it germinates then in the spring. One of the unfortunate things about a potentially dry spring is frost seeding doesn't work because the freeze-thaw doesn't hold up and we don't get the early spring rain splash. So frost seeding may not be the best solution for a dry spring scenario. Typically, frost seeding works best with legumes, red clover, ladino clover, white clover, certainly have been better than with alfalfa and trefoil under Iowa growing conditions. Grasses are less successfully frost-seeded. Another option for establishing other species into existing legumes or into existing grass and hay fields would be interseeding. Interseeding, the goal is the same, keep the existing sod and add additional species. Seems to work more consistently with both grasses and legumes. We can delay the early spring interseeding until it's closer to the time of seed germination. So March through early April is the target time for interseeding. Some other things that improve the success of interseeding: having fertility adequate to support legumes. Grass sod should be kept short to reduce competition for light and moisture for the new seedlings. That may not be a problem following the drought of 2012. We're using a drill with interseeding to more carefully place that seed in good soil contact. 1/4 to 1/2 inch shallow depth of placement is a very important practice for successful interseeding. And then continue to reduce competition from the existing sod by doing some intermittent grazing through the establishment time of the new seedling grasses and legumes. Overseeding is not a sure thing. As I mentioned with frost seeding, if dry conditions are present, we may not get adequate establishment. So preparation and little luck with the growing season are certainly also part of successes. If you're going to try it, don't do the whole areas. Start with the most damaged areas with the thinnest grass sod sites for best success. And lastly, using good recovery management in hay harvest and pastures may be one of our best strategies coming into the spring of 2013. These plants are coming out of a very stressed growing condition. They've gone through a winter. They're going to recover relatively slowly. Some guidelines would be to give them some time to rest and recover some of their vigor. For hay fields, generally recommend delaying first cutting to early to mid bloom stage. For pastures, wait a little longer before you start grazing in the spring. Wait till we get 3 to 4 inches of top growth, a few fully emerged leaves to start the process of recovering nutrient reserves for that plant. And you also may consider reducing your stocking rate 20 or 30%, at least initially in the growing season, until we see what kinds of weather patterns we are going to have. So 2013 may be a recovery year. It may be a continuation year. We'll just have to wait and see.